Trevor Donovan was 36 years old, and 3 months ago his wife started working late on Thursdays, every single Thursday without fail. Tonight, standing in the parking lot of the Grandview Plaza Hotel at 9:47 p.m., holding a crumpled receipt with room number 412 written on it, Trevor was about to discover the truth that would either destroy his marriage or save it. He wasn't sure which terrified him more. Trevor worked as a mechanical engineer at Barrington Industrial Solutions in Minneapolis, Minnesota, pulling in a solid $87,000 a year. His wife, Natalie, was a marketing coordinator for Skyline Digital Agency, making around $63,000 annually. They'd been married for 9 years, owned a modest split-level house in the suburbs of Edina, drove 2 paid-off Honda sedans, and were saving for their first real vacation to Europe. They were comfortable, stable, unremarkable in the best possible way. Until 3 months ago. It started subtly. Natalie began staying late at the office every Thursday evening, arriving home around 10:30 or 11 p.m., sometimes later. "Big client presentation on Friday morning," she'd explained the first time, kissing his cheek and heading straight to the shower. "Rebecca and I need to finalize the deck." Rebecca Tran was Natalie's creative director, a workaholic who regularly sent emails at 2 a.m. The explanation made perfect sense, but it kept happening. Every Thursday for 12 consecutive weeks. Trevor wasn't the jealous type. He'd never checked Natalie's phone, never questioned her whereabouts, never felt that gnawing suspicion that seemed to poison so many marriages. They trusted each other. At least, he thought they did. But small details started accumulating like snowflakes before an avalanche. Natalie began showering immediately after coming home on Thursday nights, even though she usually preferred morning showers. She started wearing different perfume, something more expensive than her usual drugstore brand. She password-protected her phone, claiming her company's new security policy required it. 2 weeks ago, Trevor had asked casually over Saturday breakfast, "How are those Thursday presentations going?" Natalie had looked up from her coffee, something flickering across her face too quickly for him to identify. "They're fine. Why?" "Just wondering if all that extra work is paying off. Maybe you'll get that promotion you've been wanting." She'd smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe. We'll see." That's when Trevor noticed the credit card statement. They had a joint checking account for household expenses, but each maintained their own credit cards for personal spending. Trevor rarely looked at Natalie's statements. They trusted each other with money, but this month the envelope had been left on the kitchen counter, partially open. Inside, a charge caught his eye. Grandview Plaza Hotel, $247, charged on a Thursday 3 weeks ago. His first thought was innocent enough. Maybe the agency had hosted a client dinner there. Maybe Natalie had expensed it. But when he checked the next month's statement, which arrived yesterday, there it was again. Grandview Plaza Hotel, $247. Same amount, same day of the week, different date. Trevor had spent last night lying awake while Natalie slept peacefully beside him. Her back to him like a wall. He'd stared at the ceiling fan making lazy circles in the darkness, running through every possible explanation. Client meetings, team building, working dinners, emergency accommodation because she'd had wine and couldn't drive. Each explanation felt increasingly hollow. This afternoon, Trevor had made a decision. He'd left work early, claiming a dentist appointment, and driven to the Grandview Plaza Hotel. It was an upscale boutique hotel in downtown Minneapolis, the kind of place that catered to business travelers and people celebrating anniversaries. Sleek, modern, expensive. The lobby had floor-to-ceiling windows, contemporary art on the walls, and a bar area where well-dressed people sipped cocktails that probably cost $18 each. Trevor had approached the front desk, his heart hammering against his ribs. A young man with perfectly styled hair and a name tag reading Justin smiled professionally. "Welcome to Grandview Plaza. How can I help you today?" "I'm looking for my wife," Trevor had said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. "Natalie Donovan. She has a reservation here?" Justin's fingers moved across his keyboard, his expression shifting from welcoming to uncomfortable in the space of 3 seconds. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't provide guest information. Privacy policy." "I'm her husband," Trevor had said, pulling out his driver's license and his phone with their wedding photo as the lock screen. "Same last name? Same address, please. I just need to know if she's here." Justin had glanced around the lobby, then lowered his voice. "Sir, I really can't. Look, I could lose my job." Trevor had leaned forward. "My marriage might be ending right now. Please, just tell me if there's a reservation under her name." Something in Trevor's expression must have moved Justin, because he'd glanced at his screen one more time and nodded almost imperceptibly. "Room 412, he'd whispered. "But I never told you that. You didn't hear it from me." "Thank you," Trevor had managed, his mouth dry. "I appreciate it." He'd left the hotel immediately, his mind reeling. Room 412. A hotel room. On a Thursday night. Every week. Trevor had driven aimlessly through Minneapolis for 2 hours, watching the afternoon turn to evening, wrestling with what to do next. Should he confront her? Should he wait and gather more evidence? Should he call a lawyer? Should he just go home and pretend he didn't know? But he couldn't pretend. Not anymore. The not knowing was worse than any truth could be. Before we continue with what Trevor discovers in room 412, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this right now, you're probably someone who values honesty and truth in relationships. You probably understand what it feels like to have that gut instinct telling you something isn't right. And if that's you, then you're exactly the kind of person who should be subscribed to Story Mode Folktales. Every single day, we share real stories about real people facing impossible situations. Stories that make you think about trust, loyalty, and the complexity of human relationships. Hit that subscribe button right now, smash the like button to support the channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Are you in New York, California, maybe somewhere across the ocean? We want to know, because this community is built on people like you who appreciate authentic storytelling. Now, let's see what Trevor finds in room 412. Now, at 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, Trevor sat in his Honda Accord in the Grandview Plaza Hotel parking garage. Natalie's silver Honda Civic was parked 3 rows over. He'd spotted it immediately, the Obama 2012 bumper sticker still fading on the rear window because Natalie refused to scrape it off, insisting it was a piece of history. Trevor's hands were shaking. He gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles went white, trying to steady himself. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up. Love you." 3 words that now felt like broken glass. Love you. Trevor got out of his car and walked toward the hotel entrance like a man walking toward a firing squad. The November air was cold against his face, but he barely felt it. The lobby was quieter now, fewer business travelers, more couples dressed for expensive dinners. The bar area had live jazz playing, a woman with a smoky voice singing about lost love and second chances. He took the elevator to the 4th floor. His reflection in the polished doors showed a man who looked older than 36, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there this morning. The elevator dinged softly, and the doors opened onto a carpeted hallway that smelled like vanilla and money. Room 408, 410, 412. Trevor stood outside the door for a full minute, his hand raised to knock but frozen in place. Behind this door was the truth. Once he knocked, once he saw whatever was happening inside, there was no going back. Ignorance, however painful, was about to be replaced with certainty. And certainty, he was learning, was terrifying. He heard voices inside. Natalie's voice, bright and engaged. Then another voice, female, saying something that made Natalie laugh. Trevor's hand was still raised, trembling now. He took a deep breath and knocked 3 times. The voices inside stopped abruptly. Footsteps approached the door. Trevor's heart was beating so hard he could hear it in his ears. The door opened. Natalie stood there in jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her face makeup-free and younger-looking than usual. When she saw Trevor, her eyes went wide with shock. Then something else, something that looked like panic. "Trevor," she breathed. "What are you doing here?" Trevor couldn't speak. Behind Natalie, he could see into the hotel room. It wasn't what he'd expected. The king-size bed was untouched, still perfectly made with its decorative pillows arranged precisely. Instead, the small desk and table were covered with art supplies, canvases, sketchbooks, paintbrushes, tubes of acrylic paint, charcoal pencils, and what looked like half-finished paintings propped against the walls. A woman appeared behind Natalie, mid-50s with gray-streaked hair pulled into a loose bun, wearing paint-stained jeans and a Berkeley sweatshirt. She looked at Trevor with confusion, then at Natalie with understanding. "Natalie," the woman said gently, "I think you need to talk to your husband." Natalie's face had gone pale. She stepped into the hallway, pulling the door partially closed behind her. "Trevor, I can explain. Please, just let me explain." "Explain what?" Trevor's voice came out rougher than he intended. "Explain why you're in a hotel room every Thursday night? Explain why you've been lying to me for 3 months? Explain why you're charging $247 to your credit card every week?" Natalie closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears. "I'm not having an affair." "Then what is this?" Trevor gestured at the door. "Who is that woman? What's happening in there?" "That's Margaret Chen. She's my art teacher." The words hung in the air between them. Art teacher. Trevor blinked. "What?" "Can we go somewhere to talk?" Natalie asked, her voice cracking. "Please, Trevor, I'll tell you everything. I should have told you months ago. I was afraid." They walked to a quiet corner of the lobby, sitting in leather chairs that probably cost more than their monthly mortgage payment. The jazz singer was singing something slow and melancholy. Natalie twisted her wedding ring around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since the day Trevor put it there 9 years ago. "I've been taking art lessons," she began quietly. "Every Thursday night for the past 3 months. Margaret teaches private lessons out of hotel rooms because she doesn't have a studio space. She charges $230 for a 3-hour session, plus I split the cost of the room with her. That's where the $247 comes from." Trevor stared at her. "Art lessons? You've been sneaking around for 3 months to take art lessons?" "I wasn't sneaking," Natalie said, then stopped herself. "Okay, yes, I was sneaking. But not for the reason you think." "Then why?" "Because I was embarrassed," Natalie said, the words tumbling out now. "Because I'm 35 years old and I work in marketing, and I'm supposed to be practical and sensible and good with numbers and spreadsheets. Because when I told you 7 years ago that I used to dream of being an artist, you said that was nice but impractical. And you were right, it was impractical, but I never stopped thinking about it." Trevor remembered that conversation. They'd been dating for 2 years, lying on a blanket in Minnehaha Park, watching clouds. Natalie had mentioned she'd wanted to go to art school, but had chosen business school instead, because her parents said she needed a real career. Trevor had agreed that business school was the smarter choice. He'd thought he was being supportive. "Nat, if you wanted to take art classes, why didn't you just tell me?" because I was afraid you'd think it was silly, a waste of money, that I was being irresponsible." She wiped at her eyes. "We're saving for Europe. We're trying to build our retirement accounts. And here I am spending nearly $1,000 a month on painting lessons in a hotel room. It feels selfish and ridiculous. But Trevor, when I'm painting, I feel like myself for the first time in years." Trevor sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. All those late Thursday nights, all his suspicions and fears, all the scenarios he'd imagined about affairs and betrayal. And the truth was art lessons. "Show me," he said quietly. "Show me what?" "Your paintings. Show me what you've been working on." They went back to room 412. Margaret greeted Trevor warmly, clearly relieved the situation wasn't what it had appeared. "Your wife is extraordinarily talented," she told him. "I've been teaching for 30 years and I rarely see raw talent like this." The room was indeed filled with Natalie's work. Landscapes of Minnesota lakes at sunrise, their colors rich and vibrant. Abstract pieces that seemed to capture emotion in swirls of color. Portraits that were half-finished, but already haunting in their detail. A painting of their house that made it look more beautiful than Trevor had ever noticed. Trevor picked up a canvas showing an empty chair by a window, morning light streaming through. The loneliness in it was palpable. "This is what you've been hiding from me?" Natalie nodded, her arms wrapped around herself. "I know it's impractical. I know I should have told you. I know we have financial goals and responsibilities, and I was being selfish spending this money without discussing it. But I just needed something that was mine. Something that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or client presentations, or being good at things that don't make my soul feel alive." Trevor set down the painting carefully. "These are beautiful, Nat. They're really beautiful. You're not angry?" "I'm angry you didn't feel like you could tell me. I'm angry you thought you had to hide this. But angry about the art itself? No." He looked around the room at the evidence of his wife's secret life. "How did I make you feel like you couldn't share this with me?" Before Natalie could answer, I want to pause and remind you to subscribe to Story Mode Folktales if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this that remind us that sometimes the truth is more complicated than we imagine. Now, back to Trevor and Natalie. Natalie sat on the edge of the hotel bed, looking small and vulnerable in a way Trevor hadn't seen in years. "You didn't make me feel that way. Not exactly. It's just, somewhere along the way, we became really good at being practical. Really good at being responsible adults who make smart financial decisions and plan for retirement and do the right things. And somewhere in all that practicality, I forgot how to be the person who dreams impractical dreams." "Why Thursdays?" Trevor asked. "Why every week?" "Because Margaret only teaches on Thursday evenings, and because by Friday I'm usually so depleted from work that I need something to look forward to. These 3 hours every Thursday, they've kept me sane. They've reminded me that I'm more than just my job title and my mortgage and my 401k balance." Margaret, who had been quietly cleaning brushes in the corner, spoke up. "If it helps, Natalie has been preparing for something. She didn't want to tell you until she was sure she could actually do it." Trevor looked at his wife. "Do what?" Natalie took a deep breath. "There's a local artist collective that has an exhibition every spring. Emerging artists can submit work for consideration. If selected, you get wall space at the Minneapolis Institute of Art for 2 weeks. Thousands of people see it. Art buyers, critics, collectors. It could lead to actual sales, maybe even gallery representation. And you're submitting? The deadline is next month. I've been working toward it for 3 months. That's why I needed consistent lessons, why I was so secretive. I didn't want to tell you I was doing this and then fail at it. I didn't want you to see me try for something this big and fall short." Trevor moved to sit beside her on the bed. "Nat, I've never thought you were someone who falls short at things. You're the most capable person I know. Capable at work things, practical things. But this is different. This is putting my heart on display and hoping people don't think it's garbage. She laughed shakily. It's terrifying. Is this what you want? Trevor asked. To be an artist? To make this a real part of your life? I don't know if I want to quit my job and become a full-time artist or anything that dramatic, Natalie said. But yes, I want this to be real. I want to create things that matter. I want to see if I can actually do this, not just as a hobby, but as something meaningful. Trevor thought about the past 3 months, the distance he'd felt between them, the way Natalie had seemed distracted, secretive, somewhere else even when she was home. He'd interpreted it as her pulling away from him, from their marriage. But maybe she'd been pulling toward something, toward a version of herself she'd abandoned years ago. I'm sorry I made you feel like you couldn't tell me, Trevor said. I'm sorry that somewhere along the way, I became the person who values practicality over dreams. That's not who I want to be, especially not for you. Natalie leaned her head against Trevor's shoulder. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I've been sneaking around and making you worry, and probably making you think terrible things. I definitely thought terrible things, Trevor admitted. I was convinced you were having an affair. I've been losing my mind for weeks. With who? Natalie asked. With Margaret? Despite everything, they both laughed. Margaret, still in the corner, smiled too. I'm very flattered, but I've been happily married to my wife for 27 years. Trevor looked at his wife's paintings again. These really are extraordinary, Nat. I'm not just saying that. I mean it. Thank you, Natalie said quietly. That means more than you know. So what happens now? Trevor asked. Now we go home, Natalie said. And I stop lying to you. And maybe you help me pick which pieces to submit for the exhibition. I can do that. But Nat. Yeah? Don't stop taking the lessons. Don't stop painting. We'll figure out the money. We'll push Europe back another year if we need to. This matters. You matter. Natalie's eyes filled with tears again. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I love you too. Even when you're spending $247 a week on secret hotel room art lessons. They said goodbye to Margaret, who hugged them both and made Natalie promise to keep coming to Thursday sessions. As they rode the elevator down to the lobby, Trevor held Natalie's hand, something they'd stopped doing somewhere along the way without noticing. Can I see the paintings you have at home? Trevor asked as they walked to their cars. The ones you've been hiding from me? They're in the garage, Natalie admitted. Behind the Christmas decorations and the camping gear we never use. Show me when we get home. They drove their separate cars back to their house in Edina, the same route they'd driven thousands of times. But somehow tonight it felt different. The streets looked different. The familiar landmarks seemed new. At home, Natalie led Trevor into the garage. Behind a stack of plastic bins and an artificial Christmas tree they'd bought 5 years ago, she pulled out canvas after canvas. Paintings she'd done before she started lessons with Margaret. Cruder and less skilled, but full of raw emotion and vibrant color. I've been painting in here sometimes, Natalie confessed. On weekends when you're watching football, late at night when you're asleep. I'd come out here and just create for an hour or two. It became my escape. Trevor looked at a painting of a woman standing at the edge of a lake, her back to the viewer, arms outstretched. Is this you? Sort of. It's how I felt. Like I was standing at the edge of something vast and beautiful, but I was too afraid to dive in. You're diving now, Trevor said. Yeah, Natalie smiled. I guess I am. They carried the paintings inside, propping them against the living room walls, turning their suburban house into an impromptu gallery. Trevor opened a bottle of wine. the good one they'd been saving for a special occasion, and they sat on the floor surrounded by Natalie's art. "Tell me about this one," Trevor said, pointing to an abstract piece that seemed to pulse with energy, reds and oranges and yellows swirling together. "That's anger," Natalie said. "Frustration. All the things I felt but didn't know how to express. I painted it after a particularly awful day at work when I had to present a campaign I knew was terrible, but the client loved it because it was safe and boring." "And this one?" "A quiet piece, mostly blues and grays, with hints of gold breaking through." "Hope," Natalie said. "The feeling that maybe there's something more than just going through the motions. Maybe there's still magic left." They talked until 2 a.m., Natalie explaining each painting, Trevor asking questions, and really listening in a way he hadn't done in longer than he could remember. Somewhere in the conversation, Trevor realized something important. "I think I've been sleepwalking through our marriage," he said. "Not in a bad way, exactly, but just going through the routines. Work, dinner, TV, sleep, repeat. I stopped asking you the big questions. I stopped being curious about who you're becoming. I just assumed I knew you completely." "I've been doing the same thing," Natalie admitted. "We became really good roommates who sometimes have sex and split the mortgage. That's not what I want us to be." "What do you want us to be?" Natalie thought about it. "Partners who still surprise each other. People who support each other's impossible dreams, not just sensible 5-year plans. Humans who are still growing and changing, not just assets that appreciate in value." "I want that too," Trevor said. "So maybe we start now. Tell me one impossible dream you have besides being an artist." Natalie smiled. "I want to learn Italian and spend a month in Tuscany painting landscapes. I want to foster rescue dogs, even though they'll destroy our furniture. I want to take a pottery class and make really ugly bowls that we'll use anyway because I made them. What about you?" Trevor had to think. When had he stopped having impossible dreams? "I want to build furniture, like real furniture, not IKEA stuff. I want to take woodworking classes and make a dining room table that we'll have for 50 years. I want to try stand-up comedy, even though I'll probably bomb. I want to learn to play guitar badly and annoy you with terrible renditions of 90s songs." "Those are good dreams," Natalie said. "Those are really good dreams." "Can I tell you something that's been bothering me?" Trevor asked. "Of course." "When I was standing outside room 412 tonight before I knocked, I was terrified, not just of what I might find, but of the idea that maybe I didn't know you at all anymore. That maybe we'd grown into strangers who shared a mortgage and a last name but nothing else real. And now I think maybe we'd started to become strangers. But I also think we caught it in time. We can find our way back to each other, to the people who fell in love in Minnehaha Park talking about cloud shapes and impossible futures." Natalie kissed him. Really kissed him, the way they used to before kisses became routine. "Let's not lose each other again. Let's stay curious, stay surprised, stay awake." "Deal," Trevor said. 1 month later, Trevor stood in the Minneapolis Institute of Art, wearing the nice suit he usually reserved for job interviews and funerals. Natalie stood beside him in a black dress, her hair done up, looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. The exhibition was opening in 15 minutes. Natalie's work had been accepted, 3 paintings selected for display in the Emerging Artists section. "What if people hate them?" Natalie whispered. "What if critics think they're amateurish and derivative?" "What if they don't?" Trevor countered. "What if someone sees them and feels exactly what you felt when you painted them?" The doors opened. People flowed in, art enthusiasts and collectors and critics with notebooks. Trevor watched strangers stop in front of Natalie's paintings, saw them lean in closer, saw them take photos, saw them consult their programs to note her name. One woman, elegant and silver-haired, stood in front of the painting of the empty chair by the window for a full 5 minutes, tears streaming down her face. She approached Natalie afterward. "Did you paint that?" "I did," Natalie said. "It's extraordinary. It captures loneliness without despair, solitude without sadness. I need to buy it. Is it for sale?" Natalie looked at Trevor, her eyes wide with shock and joy. "It's for sale." They talked price. The woman wrote a check for about $200, Natalie's first art sale, enough to cover 5 weeks of lessons with Margaret. By the end of the evening, 2 more paintings had sold. A small local gallery owner asked Natalie to consider a group show in the summer. A corporate buyer wanted to commission a piece for their office lobby. "I can't believe this is real," Natalie said as they drove home, the checks in her purse feeling like proof of impossible things. "You did this," Trevor said. "You took the risk. You put yourself out there." "We did this," Natalie corrected, "because you didn't make me choose between being practical and being an artist. You found a way to support both." At home, they celebrated with champagne and take-out Chinese food, sitting on their living room floor the way they had a month ago. "Thank you," Natalie said, "for not giving up on us, for knocking on that hotel room door even though you were terrified, for choosing to understand instead of assume the worst. Thank you for reminding me that we're more than our jobs and our mortgage," Trevor replied, "that we're still people with dreams and art and impossible futures ahead of us." 6 months later, Trevor submitted his first handmade coffee table to a local craft fair. It was slightly wobbly, and the stain was uneven, but Natalie loved it anyway. They used it in their living room, propping Natalie's newest sketches on it, placing their morning coffee cups on its imperfect surface. It became their favorite piece of furniture because it represented something important: the willingness to try, to risk failure, to create something imperfect but real. The lesson they learned wasn't complicated, but it changed everything. People need more than routine and responsibility. They need dreams, even impractical ones. They need space to become who they're meant to be. And sometimes the scariest moment, standing outside that hotel room door, confronting the unknown, that's exactly when transformation begins. Don't assume you know everything about the people you love. Keep discovering them. Keep being surprised by them. Keep asking the big questions and listening to the real answers. Because the moment you stop being curious about each other, the moment you settle into comfortable assumptions, that's when you start to lose what made you choose each other in the first place. Trevor and Natalie aren't perfect. They still have bad days and boring weeks and arguments about money. But they're awake now. They're present. They're building a life that has room for both mortgage payments and impossible dreams, for both 401k contributions and art lessons in hotel rooms. And that makes all the difference. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you that relationships need more than routine to thrive, then do me a favor. Subscribe to Story Mode Folktales right now. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what impossible dream you're still holding on to. Because we're building a community here of people who believe in second chances, honest communication, and the courage to keep growing even when it's scary. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.